Hello. I just wanted to tap in with a video, and this one's going to be a little bit of testimony, but it's to a greater objective. So I can't go in exactly. I wouldn't know where to start with this story because it's a lot of a story, and it's the best way I can describe it is to say that so I I get to convey my point. I'm gonna try to tell as much of my story as I can in one video. Um, so I was born in the mid 80s, and then I grew up in the Twin Cities in Minnesota till I was about like five or so, and then I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, when I was in just about to enter kindergarten in the early 90s. I was saying in another video, that video I launched off into a discussion about paternalism, but what I was trying to say is that you can appreciate me as almost exactly a child of the 90s because I was born at the very end of 1985. So my childhood was almost squarely the last 4 years of the 80s, 86 to 90, 10 years of the 90s, and then the first 4 years of the 2000s. And I turned 18. So I was born about a month before 1986, and I turned 18 about a month before 2004. So I was almost exactly squarely a child of the 90, give or take. If you take like the scientific margin of error. But then at the beginning of the 90s, I had a younger sibling born to me and or born to our family, and that sibling was we never actually connected since they were born. Like I was sometimes it's weird, but some they have something called like postpartum where like a mother doesn't bond with their child. But for me, I never actually bonded with my brother, and we were actually inimical since he was very young. Was my brother like that? And I was like a little bit doting on him and loving. Like there's this video when he was born where I was like they were filming the experience of him being born, and I was a little bit rambunctious and kind of happy as a child. And I was like, it's my this family friend said he's gonna be your future friend. I said he's my future friend, my future, but he never was anything of a friend. Uh and so we actually didn't bond. Is I don't know what that's called when you don't bond with your sibling like that. And a lot of my life, the attention in my family is skewed towards my sibling, and I never actually had a problem with him getting attention because I actually wasn't interested in my parents' attention because they were kind of whack. Like my mother was really beautiful and kind, but she was also just kind of whack. And my father was like he was alcoholic, and like in chasing like dreams about like being educated, like even as he's having a family. And so um I was never like fancying their attention, but the actual dynamic changed in the family where they actually were like fond of him. And it was like they have this thing called like the golden child effect. I'm not sure, I haven't looked into that, but that's a lot of like what I experienced as a person to the present day is that that dynamic of the golden child was set in our family. But then also when you it's appreciated that when you go out into a community, your school, your neighborhood, your life, your career, your profession, the actual dynamics that you come from in your family, they impact you in subconsciously and maybe unconsciously, and it plays out in your actual the forming of your personality and the experiencing of your personality by other people, and they play into it. So actually a lot of people were very wicked to me my whole life, and I think part of it's from the family play, and most people would actually like be very respectful about to my family members and also my sibling, to where even as that sibling would later be like unemployed for 10 for multiple decades, and you wonder if there's not some kind of like royal blood in our family that people could have that much respect for someone that doesn't work as though they were royalty, for people to stamp that friends, family, community, professionals. We had the same job as adults, and that job I worked my finger to the bone, and the same job my brother did nothing. And it's the type of job where you can get penalized for not doing the real rigors of the work, and I never saw that happen so. But then in the 90s, it was like a lot about there was like a lot of gang culture in the part where I was at in the Southwest, and I grew up around that, so close to it that I didn't think it was cool, and I was about sports. Then I got to the north, and my family was like my parent put me in stupid situations where I could have been mixed up in that type of lifestyle, but I was actually too gay for it because I was when I say gay, I just mean like gentle and open minded. I was actually too gentle and open minded to be part of that type of lifestyle, that type of like gang stuff. But I would be around those elements and sometimes like shown favor that could have got into that, but I was just too gay like that. Like, and I don't mean homosexual, just too gay. And then but in the within the last few years, um I got misidentified while traveling one time, and that amounted to me getting some form of stalking type of stuff going on of like a group, like an actual cohort of men and women laying on me at all, and also vandalizing and breaching my residence at the off ungodly hours of the night, as like a saga that went on for, and then went while experiencing heartlessness with my family, and also sabotage and contempt while I was productive within that. I served as a personal care attendant, and I also helped people in my community, and was a student, a scholar on online education platforms. But I sustained sabotage and contempt from my family members, especially my father and my sibling, going through that, and seeing me go through that, knowing that we all technically went through that, but they were as nasty during that whole thing as though they had been opposition. And I think that some of these horrible things that happen for us, they're an extension of our actual dynamics in our family. And then that was for this many years, and some of that saga, those experiences, episodes never really stopped. But then uh, getting through then the pandemic happened as that was happening. Then after that, I became a professional, a school bus driver, and I experienced a lot of like contempt, as a like professional contempt from my peers and superiors, and even students too. And then a lot of very like serious stuff would happen at some of these driving jobs, like violence between students, and even violence between the community and students that I'd be serving. Very serious stuff, and also incompetence with like oversight. And um and then I amounted to having my own place to live last fall, when a family member was becoming combative with another family member, and I recognized that was very there was a matter of time till it got very serious. I left like that. Then I'm just like trying to gloss over this at this point, but then um, uh, I remember one time, like around the end of the pandemic, I woke up. So I'll say where I stay at, I heard the building being breached in the middle of the night, ungodly hours of the night, like at least three times. Had our family vehicle was tagged with gang insignia. The building itself, some of the property of the building was tagged with gang insignia years back, and then as recently as like maybe this year. Then different times there'd be glass strategically placed in our parking bay, so to flatten tires, and the tires were flattened with that. Then I heard criminals conspiring in a stairwell, describing what sounded like my description. I heard people that didn't sound like they would the area is a little bit redlined and racist where I'm at, so you wouldn't hear people of a particular demographic in the at all, but especially in the middle of the night. I heard them outside of the building. I heard females in the stairwell conspiring about what sounded like my identity. I heard one time I woke up in the middle of the daytime, like on a Sunday afternoon, and someone I didn't know was yelling threats against what sounded like my parents, like I'll kill your mom and dad, I'll kill your mom, I'll kill your dad. Some random woman screaming that outside of our low level window in like a Sunday afternoon. Then I was that happened. Then it abated a little bit, and then like a few months ago, I was walking home, and I got stalked and followed by a vehicle, and that might have played out differently because there was thick construction going on. Then a couple weeks later, um I was doing a delivery, and then I got accosted by some men in a vehicle full of men with windows rolled down, pulling up to me, engaging me, and saying nonsense while having like questionable body language. And then I said the name of Jesus Christ, and that changed. I was doing a delivery like maybe a year ago in the downtown in Minneapolis, and I had a car come from the other side of the street because I'm on one side of the street. They come across and approach me. One occupant with the window rolled down, like, hey, what's up, boss? What's up? Hey, what's up? Hey, boss, what's up, boss? With the window rolled down like that. But I acted like I didn't know English at that point, so they actually didn't know how to engage me because I didn't. Sometimes when you're being accosted, you actually need to say the right thing because we need to justify things as human beings, and we need a suitable pretext even for heinous stuff. So by not engaging back verbally, that might have changed that. And then I left, traveled abroad, had different experiences. Was at a gas station in the Southwest, and I heard two people plotting at me at the same time. African American person plotting on me and Hispanic person plotting on me, actually coordinating an assassination about what sounded like my description as I'm homeless and trying to charge my phone in a gas station. I got help with I was able to connect a family's debit card to my cell phone and afford gas money to get out of there that night. I pull over to a gas station maybe 300 miles away, also in the middle of the night, and then I won't even just the rest of that story wouldn't even sound believable if I said it, but I'll just say I got again plotted on by. It just doesn't make sense at a certain point. Then I get all the way to my destination, hospitalized because I was on a motorcycle so long. I get out of the hospital. I get gifted with a free instrument because I've been on hard times, and your skill can diminish. It's a perishable skill being a musician. So losing about a month, I also got around to getting my guitar um, politely stolen while I was doing this before I left the state. So I contact a venue that helps musicians with free instruments, but I had to travel 30 miles to get there in a place I'm not from. I walked 1 miles of it, took a bus the rest of the way, barely got it in the middle of the night, came home, faulty directions from Google, got stranded, got a ride to Denny's by a veteran so I could charge my phone, got a free meal at Denny's because I was playing nice music. Then I had to walk home past at least on dark. It's in a city of a large city in Southern California, but some of the actual highways within the city, they can get a little bit remote and rural, somewhat suburban, but also a little bit rural. And I walked past like a cliff face or a wood face of what sounded like first one, then five, then 10, then 15, then 20 chickens in the middle of the night. But I think it was actually coyotes that was doing that. It was like incessant the sound of chickens as I'm a pedestrian on foot walking past in poorly lit places. And then I get past that, and someone actually gets to shooting at me in the middle of the night, multiple rounds flying over my head, and I had to run for my life. And when you're running for your life, I had actually been um, I I've been accosted by a vehicle before, but not fired upon. But when you're fired upon, there's a you're so you're there's a you have to exert yourself because you can appreciate that you may be slain if you don't exert yourself, but you also are becoming fatigued. So there's an instinct to capitulate and to surrender even as you're running for your life and ostensibly in combat, even though you're being put to flight, you're still engaged in combat like that. But you want to surrender like that. But I was in such a position that I didn't have to. I could I could survive that just barely at the point of being exhausted. But had I been accosted like that in the on the trip, like even to the point where I was getting, because I was lost, but even at the point where I was being engaged by coyote, potentially coyotes, because if they're dogs, they can perceive you well before you can perceive them, and you got 20 of them there. But if I had been fired upon at that range, that would have been really horrible to run for your life and run out of steam like that. But all I meant to say is that I'm coming from all that, and my family was aware of that. And then so I got. But what's the scariest thing you've ever seen before? Is what I wanted to say with this. Is that so? I've seen that stuff, heard that stuff. The hearing of it is more so scary than seeing it. But then I get to my family, and I'm still coming out of hard times that I just barely became viable again because I have access to a delivery platform after being ousted from another one. That the delivery platform is somewhat lucrative, especially for a person being faced with homelessness. It's lucrative like that. But I had a family member become violent with me today, verbally, and as violent as you can, as it would be traumatic for a person to experience this coming from a family member while being homeless. But I've seen so much traumatic stuff. There's something called post-traumatic growth that I picked up in a book by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. You hear more about post-traumatic stress because it's profitable, but there's actually something called post-traumatic growth, which is that we have it within us to frame our experience and grow from framing from our experience and framing it in such a way that we become stronger by it. One of the deepest lessons I ever had was from my friend. We were like sparring partners for basketball growing up, and his father had been incarcerated when we were young, and he gave me a lot of seasoning in game, even though we were the same grade, but he was about a year younger than me, and he said it not he meant what he said, and he knew what he was talking about as a young person. We were yet children and still in the middle of primary school, and he said what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and he was firm about that, and that's actually true, is that what doesn't kill you doesn't make you stronger. So I'm not asking for flowers with this video, or they say sympathy is another form of the devil, because sympathy disempowers us and is judgmental and is really mean spirited. A lot of times people will apologize to you, like sometimes attractive people. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Oh no, oh no, I'm sorry. When someone's sorry like that, that's sympathy, and that's the same thing as dismissing a person or like shunning a person. So it's actually shunning a person to say sorry. It's horrible, but empathy is beautiful and enlightening and healing, and it is worthwhile. So, but I'm also not asking for empathy with this, but I wanted to convey an idea that might be, because this channel is for the purpose of learning, and what I fancy, if anything, is just offering an idea that's original into the lexicon of human thought and understanding, because a lot of our thought, it's cyclical and it's also shared and borrowed and a little bit hand me down, a lot of things. So if to introduce a new idea into the human experience, that might be one of the deepest feats, even a part of what we consider as art. It's not just verisimilitude is how realistic something is. It's not necessarily how much verisimilitude something is, or even creative, because I thought that we actually may not be able to be creative because what is to create has been created, but we can subtract and combine in ways that express ourselves, and the actual experience of expressing ourselves in that landing and becoming an experience to another person, and potentially gaining a new experience first, and then a new insight for others, and for ourselves landing it, and for others for us landing it, and ourselves for us landing it with others in the feedback. That might be the only thing that's new and truly creative, and that's cool. I dig that, so I wanted to fancy that. So I want to say that I think the darkest thing I've seen is that if you appreciate, a lot of life can be appreciated as a dream, is that one is that you're not entirely aware of what you experience as you're experiencing it, and you also can't recall a lot of it, and a lot of it's also imminent, and like almost like a play, where a lot of the acting has already been done for us and through us by the time we get to doing it or experiencing it, that we're not actually at the point of action with a lot of the things that we say and do and experience that are done upon us and that we do. We're not actually exactly at the point of the agent of cause of our experience. Generally, someone could argue me with that, and I wouldn't argue that if a person feels different like that. I don't mean that authoritative, but I just mean that a lot of things are almost like a little bit like of a play and inevitable. That's a fatal argument. When you say that things are already at play and are inevitable, that's a fatal type of statement, and that's a form of philosophy, is fatalism. But some of life, it really is fatal, but a dream for being fatal like that, and no more consequential or permanent or ultimate or even real or realistic than a dream is. A dream can be more realistic than what's called reality. Perception can be also, not only for human beings but different grades of being. is that according to Arthur Avalon, that might actually be a more real experience. I saw something very beautiful yesterday. I was reading a book about it's a book about harmony. It's this book here. Um, it's another approach to harmony, and uh and what they're saying in there's actually, I was reading it, and I was just completely intentional about learning harmony for the sake of of harmony. And in that moment, I didn't have any thought against other people or an intention for gain. In that moment, I was just appreciate, well, you could say maybe gaining self-expression, but I was completely engrossed with learning what harmony is about in that moment. And these two flies came up. They were actually mating. They were a mated pair, but they weren't connected like that. But they were right together as being mated, but their bodies weren't connecting, but they were completely connected. Two flies like that. And I did another video saying that that might actually be what God is the connection between people, but maybe also beings, insects, anything, the actual connection between them that you can't see. You can appreciate it by their proximity and they're choosing to be together, but you actually can't see what that bond is, but it's real there. That might actually be what God is, especially as it's between male and female, like two flies. Like I would imagine there may be male and female, but they wouldn't necessarily have to be two different genders, just the two of them that that connected, that interested in one another, that they landed together on the book about harmony, and they exactly landed on the name of one of the songs that's in the book that's called Code Mantra. That's the name of a song, Code Mantra. According to what started me on my artistic journey was reading the works of Arthur Avalon and him saying that like traveling is really dangerous. Like if you see anyone traveling, like say you're traveling and you're at a gas station and you see a family, they're having a road trip. Those people are all on a journey and they're potentially in as much danger. The parents, even the small children, it's as arduous and serious to take a journey of any kind. Even like when I take like children to school each day in a school bus, sometimes you don't appreciate how far of a distance that actually is, your residence to a school. If you have to walk, like I had to walk to get this instrument. Now I was walking at off hours like that, but I was technically walking over 26 miles, but just to walk. But when I had the danger, like the actual the coyotes, what I think chickens in the middle of the night, 1:30 at the night, 20 of them incessantly, from the middle of the woods. I don't know that there'd be chicken in the middle of the woods in California, but um, like wild chickens like that. But I thought they were coyotes. That, but then also being fired upon in the middle of the night where I'm the only one outside, so those bullets would have my name on it, and the sound of the bullets flying through the air is way more scary than the actual gunshot, because the gunshot, it just sounds like muffled or like kind of weak fireworks, but the bullets mean business and they're actually breaking the sound barrier. That's not in, I don't think that's intended by this reality, to have those objects flying at that degree of force and propulsion in the middle of the night. You're not only breaking the sound barrier, but you're breaking the moral barrier, the ethical barrier, the purposes of this reality. You're breaking that when you fire a weapon like that, and that's what you hear in the bullets sounding crazy like that. That you didn't know that there are bullets in the air, but they're breaking the sound barrier, and it's sounding crazy than like a Western movie. And when I was in an airport after that, this child was like, I was sitting in front of a child, and there was nowhere else to sit in an airport, and I closed my eyes because I didn't want to just be glaring at a child and a family like that. But the child was, they were having an active imagination and playing. And I've said that in another video, that sometimes I think the inner world of a child is what allows them to sustain some of the deprivation, the boredom also, like the boringness of an airport around stuffy adults, the deprivation, the boring, the punishment, the suffering that's a tenet of life, but also childhood. Some of how children can sustain that is their world within themselves. So this child was playing guns with themselves, like they're making the sound of guns, but they were making the sound that bullets make, not guns. Actually, they're making the sound of bullets, like when you listen to that child make those sounds like that, it actually sounded more traumatic than what I had just come off of. Because what I sounded was like gunshots in the air at a range, and guns might not actually be that effective at a range unless it's like automatic weapons or if someone's like skilled with guns. but this child was making the sounds that bullets would make if they were being effective, accurate. That sound was crazy to hear that. But what I wanted to say is that something as traumatic as that in a journey on foot, it could or likely would happen at close range or proximity of your destination or your the designating point, the emanation of a journey that's chartered, and the return are the most deadly, because that's where a person can be anticipated and also where they'd have their guard down. So just that a person would take a journey, even the children taking a journey to school in a bus, one, you can't appreciate how great of a vast of a distance that is if you're on foot generally, that you can't perceive that when you're in a vehicle. But then also it's just simply dangerous to take a journey of any kind, and that's exactly what people are doing on the road when they're taking a road trip or anything. But according to Arthur Avalon, is that journeys have always been dangerous, but holy journeys to a holy destination, like say the city of Mecca, for people who are Islamic, to take that journey is attended by a lot of risk, and it's not uncommon for people to die on journeys in the human experience, especially going back, but especially spiritual journeys. But according to Arthur Avalon, on a spiritual journey, the designation of a journey, the point of the holy land to be visited on a journey, it's more so blessed by a person who's versed in mantra than that person is blessed for that vicinity. The vicinity is more so blessed by a person who would do enough practice, but also have enough sincerity and worship and earnestness to do practice of a mantra to the point of becoming fluent in it. That speaks to how profound the reality of being competent siddha in mantra siddha, what that means. And that was actually the beginning of my intention to become a artist, is become mantra siddhi. And I apply that to music and verse and singing. That's there's a lot of beautiful verse and singing and worship and music and instruments in the Indian faith. That really compels me to that as a high degree of class and morality par excellence, self culture par excellence. And then these two flies land exactly on the book where it says song title code mantra, as they would appear to be in love, those two flies, and comfortable with coming that close to me as I'm engrossed with the purpose and subject of harmony. But then but a lot of life can be appreciated as a dream, and no more real than a dream, but also no but deep like that, is that maybe we're not ever entirely conscious. I've done another video saying that we are that we are likely unconscious more so by and large, and if anything, because were we entirely conscious, we'd tweak out and we couldn't maintain our homeostasis, and we seek to exist for being too conscious. Were we unconscious, we may not be able to have our attention captured enough to come back into the sensation of subconsciousness and then consciousness again to continue to exist. So it may not be viable to be completely, utterly conscious or unconscious. That's just my reasoning. And reasoning is actually a point of discovery in research, because one is that it prompts the formation of a hypothesis, which can be tested and actually become accepted as scientific fact. It may start as a hypothesis. The scientific method is based upon hypothesis, but hypothesis and the scientific method both, the testing of a hypothesis, the swapping of variable, the understanding of a thesis, and the proving of a thesis, that's all upon reasoning. So reasoning is not arbitrary or fanciful or delusional or redundant in itself if it's coherent and compelling to ourselves first, but then to others, and then having enough background and also ancillary research to render reasoning to communicate it compellingly and respectfully to a public audience, where it can be vetted and challenged and or supported or denied and even mocked. To do such is not it's not child's play, and it's not trivial. So, but I reason that it may not be viable to be truly, utterly conscious or unconscious, but so therefore we always be on a range of subconscious, even as we appreciate ourselves as wide awake, is that we're always still dreaming in this life. And then so what would be more so scary is that if we're always dreaming in this life, and life is a dream, maybe if you cease to exist, if you were sailed enough to cease to exist, if you were sailed to have your opportunity to exist cut short preemptively, arbitrarily, violently, you would stop dreaming. You would actually maybe be awake. That'd be the scariest thing, to wake up from a dream. This dream called life, that you know as yourself, that you know as life, had been a dream. To wake up from that and then to cease to be able to maintain homeostasis and to continue to exist for having woken up from that, that might be the scariest part. So I had a family member become very violent with me today, to the point of actually they broke my phone. They got combative with me when I left and came back a moment later. They had thrown my phone out on the ground and shattered it, and now it's not working. And I'm near about and facing and entering a period of homelessness. To do such to someone on homelessness, knowing their background but also knowing their present circumstance, that would have to constitute some form of crime. And I tried to get support for that, as I did in some of those other. I didn't try to get support when I was fired upon, because that would have been useless and likely put me or someone I love in more danger by getting incompetent law enforcement involved with that. And I've learned in the past that law enforcement is largely futile for real. They're futile and redundant and costly, and also in the interest in the business of making money, so that they're not competent for real, nuanced, serious, grave life and death circumstances. They're not. They're actually a part of the problem and can make it worse. But when I needed support for a family member becoming violent with me, somewhat locking me in a vehicle with them, becoming violent verbally, and then actually breaking my property that another family member had gifted me on hard time. That family member is coming out of hard times and gifted me with my own device that I'm surviving with. The cheapest, humble of devices. This family member understands all that and shattered that when I was returning a vehicle so that they could get to a bar, but also somewhat delaying them get to a bar. And while I'm trying to be productive, demonstrating months of sobriety, and just getting back viable on a platform of delivery, they actually become irate because they can't get to a bar, and they've been unemployed for a decade and a half, and then they shatter my phone like that. And then my other family member, no less than the person that calls himself my dad, took up for the other family member, not knowing what's going on, because they also think that I'm using too much of a I shouldn't be working that hard, and the other family needs to get to a bar. That's what's important. So that's the golden child dilemma. But when that person was getting violent with me, I looked at them, and they were. If I wasn't an experienced adult, a seasoned adult, I could have got back violent with them. I could have engaged them the same way that they did to me verbally. Then either one of us could have got violent, or I could have just got violent and cost myself my freedom, my dignity, my manhood, my life, getting incarcerated. Because you get incarcerated, you're not promised to go home from that ever. Whatever light degree of incarceration you have, county jail, whatnot, you're not guaranteed to ever get free from that, because you could get involved in the politics there, or you could just get assaulted there such that it further compromises your freedom and or your life. So that's very serious, getting incarcerated, but trying to get someone incarcerated. So this family member was getting violent like that, and they were actually looking at me like that. Like, is actually, that might be the only time you're actually awake, is when you're actually interfering with the process of life and death, and you're actually looking at. It's kind of like, so they say that when you some people have said that when you die, you just become aware. You don't have a corporal body that you correspond with. You're just aware of awareness, is what death is. But in that moment when that family member was getting violent like that, they were almost like as I was responding, because I didn't react, but as I was responding, they were looking at me like it was almost unreal. The situation was unreal. Their level of anger was unreal. Their level of contempt and some of it's because I'm gay. I'm not homosexual. I haven't had sexual experiences with members of my same sex as an adult, but I'm so gentle and open-minded and express myself such that I can be appreciated as a gay person. In my whole life I've been like that, but also some of the violence that I normally will call forth violence anywhere I go. People tend to get very violent around me soon, especially family, but a lot of it is because I'm gay, and I've come out to my sibling and my mother about that, but I haven't come out like that to my father, because he doesn't have the range to address that. He's part of the problem in my life, has been like that, and he also likely would just do different things to skew my framing of my own self, my potence, and my agency as a person, were we to have such an egregious conversation, such a conversation that he doesn't have the range to deal to address, to my taste, after knowing the person for nearly 40 years. That some people, I don't know what it'd be like to be incarcerated for 40 years, but I know what it's like to be up under and next to an alcoholic for 40 years, as life and death is at play, as livelihood is at play, as dignity is in play, as reputation is at play. And then another family member that's also having substance problems for many years, and also an attitude problem, which is as heavy as substance problem. I've experienced that. But the only thing I want to say with this video is that the deepest thing I've ever seen, that's my story. And I thought it'd be worthwhile to document my story, because we're not promised. But I'm not, what I wanted to convey is that the deepest thing I've seen before, that I saw today, the deepest thing is that when someone is getting violent with you and they're giving you the opportunity to get back violent with you, in a certain way, they're also suspended in awe that they had it in them to be that violent. But what actually is your reaction? It's almost like a test. Like, you get completely violent with someone, completely egregious with someone, you put someone's back against the wall, and what are they to do? You want them to give you a pretext so that you can get them, you can have the context to get them socially hanged first, and then potentially physically hanged by being incarcerated, but or maybe injuring themselves. Because according to a book about manhood, is called Manhood in the Making, other cultures have experienced that when you get violent with someone verbally, you disrespect with someone, you disrespect someone in their own eyes for seeing you disrespect them, there's a tendency and almost a likely imminence that they will further become violent to another person and or themselves. That's actually a pretext to be, that actually is and another thing I'll say is that family member once, like last fall, made a threat against themselves in a manipulative way to gain leverage in a family, to make a threat against their own life. And that was tolerated by my family, and other health professionals tolerated the person saying like that, how heavy that was. It was difficult to continue my line of work with a family member making statements against their own life, threatening their own life, holding their own life ransom to get leverage, and then further extend their livelihood in a family as a point of leverage, not to hold another person hostage, but to hold themselves hostage as ransom, is very heavy. But the deepest thing it would be to goad a person into making a decision that would affect the rest of their life, and likely compromise the rest of their life, if not cost the rest of their life. Also putting yourself in enough danger to goad that person like that, and see, would that person really respond like that, to do that. At that person, at the moment, I actually saw my family member wake up from this life in a moment. I saw something of what it means to be awake. And so things have a light and dark. A lot of people think that it's cool to be awake, but you wouldn't think about the dark part about that. This experience of life is beautiful, and there's a lot of things that check it, that make us stay calibrated. I think that, like they say, when you get, like, that person's high, they're high. When they say you're high like that, they mean that you're not calibrated to the atmosphere of this life. The air, the psychosocial, physical air, all the things that are part of it, the birds, the bees, the insects, us, our statements, our thoughts, our conduct, our breathing, all of that, we're all seamlessly connected in this life, but we're mitigated along atmosphere. And when you get high, or you're appreciated as high, you're somehow outside of that calibration, and it can be a tremendous experience, but not necessarily healthy. And we can injure ourselves and others like that, getting out of the calibration. All the things that actually keep us grounded to this life, the viruses, the bacteria, the food, the air pressure, the gravity, the elements, the weather, all that keeps us exactly. That's actually what yoga is. All what I'm reaching for with that, and so much more. The cosmically, terrestrially means the earth. Cosmically means the cosmos. And then so you have anything that takes place, according to Arthur Avalon, first it transpires in the spirit. Then there's some form of corresponding with the actual cosmos, the cycles that amount to night and day in our sense of time and place. Then terrestrial upon the earth, then interpersonally, then physically. That whole range exists like that, but it's the same that the atmosphere also exists like that on all that level. And in a lot of it, we're asleep because a lot of it's done for us, through us, with us, a little bit by us. That's all a dream, like a dream. but the time you're awake from that is when you have the opportunity to deviate from that, for better or worse, and you see something of what this reality is. And actually saw my family member wake up as they're being like wicked to me, and a little bit in awe of how I might respond, and and maybe get myself killed or maybe injure them. How what am I gonna do right there? When someone's actually violent with you, like say someone actually murdered someone. Some people know what it's like to murder another person or almost get murdered. I know a little bit about what it's like to almost get murdered. But when someone's actually in the process of murdering someone, there might be something of disbelief in them, and where they actually wake up for a moment and see this reality. That might actually be what's haunting to people that have committed murder. What may be haunting about that is that they actually see what this life is and woke up for a moment, woke up while they see another person also waking up, but such that that other person will wake up and no longer exist. But they both a little bit woke up together there as they're killing that person, and woke up from the dream of what this life, the beauty of this life. They deviated from that, such as to become awake in that moment. It might be thrilling and addictive, but also a little bit haunting, such as that person can't sleep like that. And I saw my family member wake up like that as they were, for intensive purposes, killing me, killing my self-esteem, killing my ability to have, killing my relationship, killing my standing in my family, killing my apparatus, my phone that I survived with, killing me, killing my esteem, my sensuality, my sexuality as a gay person. It didn't get, there was nothing sexual about it, but they stopped dignifying me when they learned I was gay, killing me like that. But wake up for a moment like that. That's the deepest thing. That's the coldest thing. That's the wicked thing I've seen or heard in all the different. I've seen some scary movies. I've seen some graphic footage. I've actually seen I've seen murder attempts and heard murder attempts. Um, but um, I've had fights. I've I've placed my hands on other people in self defense as a child, and I've had a little bit of hands put on me in fights as a kid, but by um but but I have not seen someone actually wake up from this life as they're in the process of murdering someone, or what can be appreciated as murder, um, uh, or near about murder. I have not seen someone wake up like that, and so I just want to offer that thought is that, but we do need to wake up, um, and but not speaking about this kind of stuff is what allows it to go on, and what people are counting on that hurt people. So I just want to say, wake up with this.